Hello, good evening.
Hi, at last. Oh my gosh, this is so complicated.
Actually, it's not.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah.
Yes. So, can you hear me, Conkat?
Yeah, I can hear you very well. What about
Yeah.
you? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. And I would
Okay.
just like to ask our audience if they can hear us. If they have any problem with the audio, they can tell us. Yeah. So, okay. Uh, Welcome everyone to Thumbprint Conversation. And this is a series of conversations that we've been doing with women who write on why women write. So it sounds like a very simple question, why women write, and many people ask me why is there any difference in saying why men write and why women write. So we are trying to explore this question by talking to women who write from different genres. We have been talking to poets, we've been talking to women who write about science, we're talking to women who write fiction, and tonight we are talking to Padma Shri Patricia Mukhim, who is one of the most prominent voices of Northeast India. So, though she doesn't need any introduction, but let me introduce Kongpat to everyone. Patricia Mukhim is the editor of the Shillong Times, an English daily newspaper and one of the oldest in Northeast India, having completed 75 years last year. A gender rights activist and a political commentator. She has served as member, National Security Advisory Board, and as governing body member of Indian Institute of Mass Communication. She contributes articles to regional and her book, Waiting for an Equal World, which is so evocative, the title itself, Waiting for an Equal World, published by Martin Luther Christian University in 2018, is a critical commentary on the dichotomies of the Khasi matrilineal society, and it also looks at gender dynamics across the tribal societies. So welcome, Kongpat, to our show, and tell us, how are you?
See, I have a little garden and I therapeutic, and I'm also, because I'm working from home,
Hmm.
so as a journalist, you never have time to call your own. You're on your feet 24/7, looking out for any new developments, what's happening, how many more people have tested positive. You have to do all the time, even though I think beyond a point it becomes very, very boring and not a very good thing to be reporting about. So, but then that's how time passes, and of course, one when one is at home, one also cooks and does other things as well.
Hmm. Yeah, we keep seeing the beautiful flowers that you're growing in your garden, and we keep seeing the lovely dishes that you place on your dining table, and post it on Facebook. So, apart from being a social activist, writer, journalist, a horticulturist, I would say, or you love growing flowers, and a fine cook, you also get time to answer court summons and police complaints. So please tell us, what makes Patricia Mukhim tick? What is it that keeps you going?
See, one is the thing is that I'm very passionate about issues. I just don't look at an issue very, as people say, objectively. I cannot be objective. I think when we say objective, we actually mean, a sort of an apathy. I don't believe in apathy when there is something wrong that's happening, something wrong that's been done, some corruption in the system. some misdemeanors in society, I think I feel that one should speak up, and that's the very purpose of my writing. When you ask why women write, I actually would like to answer for myself as to why I write, because I think every person who writes, man or woman, has a different story, a different reason to tell. The reason I write is because I feel very strongly about issues. And I started writing quite early in my life, when I was teaching in a school. But I don't know, unlike others, unlike my friends, I would see things going wrong and I would want to address that. And I would feel so unhappy if I have no opportunity of addressing that. And then one day, the editor of the newspaper that I write for and the newspaper that I edit today, he said to me, "Why don't you write a regular column instead?" Then I said, I won't promise that, because when you are expected to deliver by a certain day and all, sometimes you freeze, no, you don't have the ideas in your head. So I told him, whenever I have an issue and I feel strongly about it, I shall write about it. So that was fine. But then ultimately, there were people who said to me, "We look forward to your writing. Why don't you write on a specific date, so that a specific day of the week, so that we look forward to that writing?" And that's when I started writing for the Shillong Times on Fridays. And I continue to do that even today. Yeah.
Mhm. And I think I'm quoting you when you say that it is true that the matrilineal society also has a patriarchal worldview. And
It
and when we are talking about Meghalaya, I think women are empowered when it comes to education. But then when it comes to carving a niche for yourself, or writing, creating a space for yourself, how easy or how challenging is it for women in a matrilineal society?
I don't think that we need to be talking about women in a matrilineal society vis-a-vis writing, because nobody can stop you from writing.
Hmm.
But there are a lot of people who can stop you from speaking up, you know. So speaking up and writing, I think, come on the same platform. Because many don't want to attract too much controversies by speaking out and writing, when you meet people, they have a lot to say. So I tell them, why don't you write about it? At least let there be a conversation, a societal conversation around issues, because this is what we have very little about. But no, it's very hard to ask people to write. When they do write, they will write on many other issues, which do not actually pinpoint the anomalies, because I believe every society has its own anomalies. See, we are all humans born into a society, and we have our individual faults, foibles, and we have our strong points as well. But when you communitize that, when you give the image of a whole community being right or wrong, then I think it's a bit problematic, because we all behave as individuals. So some individuals in society feel strongly about an issue, they express it in terms of, by way of theater. I can see Lapriang Sim, who's watching now. She expresses many of the problems in our society through her
Hmm.
drama, through theater, and she's done it not just here but across the world. There are those who write poems. They feel very strongly, but possibly they don't want to write, write as in newspapers, write in newspapers, because the newspaper is a very political space.
Hmm.
It has people of all kind of views, and who will also take a view of what somebody writes. So I do think that women in matrilineal society express themselves in different ways, not necessarily through writing. But when you speak about education, I think it's too generic to say that we are doing well in education. We are not doing too well. The dropout rate is fairly high. And this time in the Meghalaya board exams, only 50% of those who appeared could pass. And then you have, so the dichotomy of a matrilineal society is that we think everything is all right with women, but it's not. About 50% of women in this society are anemic. Just imagine that. Then you also have the socioeconomic caste census report, and I keep saying this very often, which says Meghalaya is landless. There are people who contest the statistics, but you can only contest this if you have alternative statistics. As long as you don't have anything else, you'll have to go by this. And for a community that is its whole life and essence on egalitarianism, it's not a very happy situation to have so many people landless, but the landlessness is just growing by the day. So I'm looking at all these book waiting for an equal.
Mm-hmm. So we're coming to your book, Waiting for an Equal World, Gender in the Northeast. And you debunk several myths and stereotypes about gender and its equation in the Northeast. So please tell us more about this book.
Yeah, this book is very critically at states like Nagaland and Mizoram, where women really have no voice and don't inherit it. Everything is so patriarchal. Even in Meghalaya, very often we're reminded that a woman who speaks too much, who dabbles too much in politics, is like the hen that crows. A hen doesn't crow. So I think in Mizoram they have a similar kind of aphorism. And I think every other community has an aphorism to tell women that they should know their place. They shouldn't be stepping out of that space that's created for them by a patriarchal society. And yes, Meghalaya is matrilineal only as far as lineage is concerned. But I think when it comes to politics, when it comes to holding your place in the traditional institution, you cannot hold office in a traditional institution. And that is supposed to be a political institution where we should be having the training to get into the state assembly, to get into parliament. But no, we are not allowed that. And ironically, we can contest the state assembly elections, the elections, but not elections to the traditional institution. So the question is why? Why in this day and age, in the 21st century, is this avenue not open for women? Is it that women cannot be good tribal administrators? And what exactly is tribal administration? So yeah, that. And then I'm looking also at the pathetic kind of health equations, the access to health that women have, the high maternal mortality, the very high infant mortality in tribal societies. Why should it happen? Why is it happening? And we know that actually it's the political system also that interfaces with the traditional system. And we know also that poverty is growing. We do not know why poverty is growing, but maybe landlessness is also one of the poverty is growing. At one point of time, people had enough of of a farmland to grow, multiple crops in one farmland. It wasn't that you grew only rice or one kind of crop. We had these, where therefore people had enough nutrition from these jhum fields. Now we don't have any more jhum fields. We grow too many commercial crops and we sell out those crops instead of using them for our own nutrition. We tend to sell them because we need the money. Most of our women, and when you look at farming, it's purely a woman related activity, and yet the same women who are growing these crops are not able to feed themselves.
Does your book, unfortunately, I haven't read your book. So, does it just raises questions, or does it also lays down solutions? Can you change the life of women in
See,
tribal
I
societies?
always try and propose solutions, and we do this all the time through, you get involved with NGOs who have the reach and who, I'm involved with so many organizations myself. I'm on the board of the CNES, research, which actually really focuses on maternal mortality and infant mortality, especially in Assam, in the Char areas of Assam. Uh, we haven't been able to do much work in the hills, except for documenting, the, 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 in Nagaland, there was a documentation of stories of the women who suffered during the whole, the whole, what you call, the militancy period. No? Many women are still very traumatized. They are in the 90s now, but they're still very traumatized, and they still, fear when they hear the sudden stoppage of a car. When a car comes to a sudden halt, they are so traumatized because nobody has brought them out of that trauma. So something like that was documented by CNES, and one of the members of CNES had done that work. Yeah.
Okay. And in fact, someone sitting in so-called mainland India will be shocked when to hear what you had said about, women in tribal societies. So, what do you think has led to the propagation of this kind of myths and stereotypes about women in the Northeast, women in tribal societies? What, what do you think? Who has created these myths and stereotypes?
I think these myths have been busted, but then there are people like the noted historian Mr. Ramchandra Guha, who goes to Nagaland, is there for 2 days, and then he goes back and writes a kind of the journals saying that women in Nagaland are so empowered. Maybe some women are empowered to speak up, maybe educated women are, but the large majority are not, and you can't generalize. So when some people create these myths, these notions of women here being very forward and can access everything and can speak for them, for, especially women in Meghalaya, they own property. You're not really looking at the reality. How many women really own property? Most of them have inherited it from their parents. Most women today do not own property. They live in rented accommodations. They live, the plight of especially women who are running a home on their own. These single women headed households. There are too many of them in Meghalaya. This must be the state that has the highest number of women uh, in these women headed households. No? They have children. They are not very educated. They have to fend for themselves and for their children, because in a matrilineal society the children live with the mother after divorce or after being abandoned by the man. These women actually live very hard lives, and Martin Luther University has done some studies on these homes. Plenty of them are in the urban setups in Shillong. Many of them, you find that their children cannot afford to go to school. I've met quite a few of those children. When you ask them why they are not in school, they say we cannot afford to go to school. Only my mother is there. Where's your father? Father is not there. This is a very common thing, a common problem, which I think needs to be addressed by the larger society. But how do we address it? On the one hand, you have this liberal view saying that it's okay, this is a society that's fairly liberal in the sense that if a man wants to, he can walk out of a marriage. If a woman wants to, she can walk out of a marriage. But how does that work in the long run for the children? Where is the stability, and how does the upbringing of these children get affected? So yeah, these are the common concerns. And uh, the reason why I wrote this book, and the reason why I spoke places in Delhi, especially at Brookings Institution, is the community of academics should know what's the real situation in Meghalaya and in the Northeast. They should stop the romancing.
Okay, there's a comment from Shivani Fukan. She said, "This is amazing, Teresa. Great to hear speak that women
Somebody not
are
afraid to speak her mind on a range of
yeah,
issues.
on a
I can
range of
feel it.
issues." Yeah, okay. I think I need to wear my specs. Yeah. Okay. Mitra Fukan writes, myth busting conversations. This is the reality and will be a resource for the future. Okay. Okay.
Mitra and I
And
have been on several common platforms. Mitra and I have been on several common platforms where I had spoken of these very same issues. And see, the thing is, for a very long time, Khasi women themselves were not willing to speak about these anomalies in our society. There were many of them who said that the traditional institution is the last bastion of men. Why should we want to be there? It's only in recent years I've heard women saying, yeah, we should also get into governance, into traditional institutional governance. Maybe we will be able to bring in some change because we will be bringing the gender perspective. For instance, if you're thinking of bringing a pipeline to a particular community, it's good to ask the women also where they think it would be most feasible to keep that water tap. No, uh, that question is never asked, and yet you find women are the ones who go and bring water early in the morning. uh, yeah, and then you look at the gender division of labor, whether it is a matrilineal society or a patriarchal society, the burden is always on the woman. So how do we begin to share this burden? This is something we don't speak of too often. And because there is no effort to share this burden, what happens is the woman who has to work or who wants to pursue, who has academic interest, who wants to pursue higher studies and go there and take on the world, she finds that it's a handicap because first of all she has to care for her children, care for her family, care for the elders, and there is no support system. So it's high time we begin to talk about, you know, a very equitable gender division of labor.
Okay, so coming back to our own stories, why do you think is it important to write our own stories?
Because nobody will write it for us. It's as simple as that. If I don't tell my own story, and there are stories of hardships, which perhaps if I share, will encourage somebody else. I had a very difficult childhood. I was also the child of a single parent, so couldn't afford even to pay the school fees. But my mother worked so hard because she just wanted me to have a good English school education, and she did it at great cost to herself. So if I tell these stories today, maybe somebody somewhere who is in the same position as I am, who finds it so difficult to go to school because she can't pay her school fees, maybe she will get, another person will get encouraged and strive harder, because we've come a long way, taken a lot of hard work, a lot of difficulties, and now as a as an editor, and I don't want to call myself a woman editor, because an editor is an editor is an editor. One also has to deal with defamation cases, contempt
Mhm.
of court cases, all kinds of cases. So one, uh, you get you develop these very, very tough sinews after a point of time, and then
Mm.
you feel you can take on the world. So it begins with the ability to articulate what's in your mind through writing, because there's no other way you can leave behind a legacy.
Mm.
How will people know what you have in your mind? And if you
Mhm.
think that what you have in your mind is important, not just for you, not just for your society, but for the larger humanity, why shouldn't you write about that?
Mhm.
Why shouldn't you try to address the all these these defects in the political system? Why should only men have their say as far as politics is concerned? I think we women must also learn to engage much more in politics, and to write about the politics of things.
Mhm. And as an editor of a newspaper, how do you think can we make our newsrooms more gender sensitive and more diverse and talk about issues which we usually don't talk about? So every story has a gender angle to it. So as a woman heading a news organization, how do you think can you change things?
Uh, See, in our organization, the Shillong Times, we have a very fair gender representation. Uh, three, four, five people at the desk are women. Uh, a reporter. We have two reporters in Shillong, one of whom is a woman. And then we have an editor for the Sunday page, who's also a woman, and a very sensitive woman at that. She really goes out of her way to look for stories that empower women, or that seek to tell the stories of women. I think I must say with some amount of pride that we are, even our male reporters, actually, in fact, we have news editor who is very, very sensitive to women's issues. I think over years we've learned to be sensitive to women's issues, because there are so many stories of rape, of molestation that we carry on a daily basis. So I think you get sensitized, because the newsroom is a sensitive space.
Mhm. And coming back to journalism, how do you think? Do you think press freedom is shrinking in the country and in the region? How do you see and how do you think can we maintain a balance with this a harsh
It's very
regime
difficult.
and the freedom to express?
It's very difficult, Teresa. You know it, I know it, that we are all watching our backs. We are, in fact, now we have to be very careful even how we word the news, that we don't offend anyone, because of the simple reason that you you can't fight too many cases. How many cases will you fight? For any little thing now, you're accused of sedition. You're accused of being anti-national. I don't know how we can survive in this regime. Then now you have even the courts, taking offense at people who are activists like Prashant Bhushan and all. So uh, it's not a very happy place to be in right now, journalism. As it is with the pandemic, we are having so many layoffs. So many hundreds of journalists across the country have lost their jobs. We haven't even started to discuss that. This is the problem with us in journalism is that we never talk about our own issues. It's left there to die a natural death. But I think it's high time that the fraternity, journalistic fraternity, remains united, and there is solidarity built. Of course, you and I are members of South Asia Women in Media. Then we have the Editors Guild. Then we have different platforms, but I think all these platforms also need to come together to build, what we to build that clarity that we need to understand what is freedom of expression, and should there be barriers to that, should there be a point beyond which there's no more freedom of expression, because freedom of expression is either there or it's not there. See, when somebody is being written about in the newspaper, and you think that what has been written is wrong, normally, in the normal circumstances, people should give a rejoinder before they go to court, and it's the duty of the newspaper to publish the rejoinder. But nowadays, most people just go straight to court. So these are the problems that we are facing these days, and you know very well that uh, the regime is tightening the reins on free speech.
Okay, there's a comment from Sudeep Day who said that, Patricia, would you like to talk about LGBT life in Shillong in particular and Meghalaya in general? Because women community too.
We, in fact, recently had a very good seminar at Martin Luther University where Roma Laishram and others had come. And there is a good number of the LGBT community in Meghalaya, not just Shillong. Many of them have come out of the closet. Many are still struggling because their parents won't accept them, society won't accept them. Some of them have even lost their jobs. It's it's a difficult situation that they're trying to cope with. It's a fairly new thing for them in Meghalaya, and there are also kind of societal sanctions against them. So I think they need to be provided a wider platform where they can express themselves. It's the want of a platform that is making it difficult for them. A common platform, no?
And how can journalists or media houses help them?
See, we can only give them the space to speak, and we have been we give them the space to express their views, to say what they feel strong. We can give them that that platform. We try and give all these. I think that's the duty of a newspaper, to provide a platform to the voiceless, to provide a platform to people who are stigmatized. They should have their say. So that's what we try to do.
And have you ever interacted with journalists, women who are working in, say, remote parts of Meghalaya or other northeastern states? I mean, especially tribal areas where the kind of problems they face, infrastructural or security or movement in inaccessible areas, hostile terrain, and geographical as well as other kind of hostilities. So did you ever have ever interact with such women reporting from down there, the grassroots in the rural
There are
hinterlands?
few women reporters, Teresa, and I must tell you that even when we call for applications, uh, for reporting, we get many applications, but at the end of the day, when they come for the interview, they say we prefer to work at the desk. I don't know why women don't really want to do the reporting bit. It could be that they're not trained enough. It could be that, like you said, it's a tough call. It's a tough call. You're out there from the morning till late night, and if you do not even have a scooty, or you can't use a scooty, or something to reach from one place to the other, it's very difficult. I can see we have a reporter with us, a young lady. She walks to many different places, and she takes a cab, and uh, it is rather tough. And then think of the rural outback, where transport is difficult, and
Mm.
there's also the fear of being attacked if you report on something that the community doesn't like. That's a reality in our part of the world,
Mhm.
especially in places where there's militancy.
Mhm.
So I have met quite a few journalists from the region, but not too many reporters. In Assam, yes, you have a lot of women reporters, but not, I don't think, too many report from the periphery.
Mhm. Yeah. And you know, of late we're beginning to see several new digital startups, media startups, web portals in the region.
Hmm.
In even in
Hmm.
small towns and even communities, they are coming up with their own portals. So how do you see the Northeast in the information ecosystem today? When you say, when we complain that the so-called national media doesn't cover us, but we also have a very prolific media here. I mean, we are beginning to tell our stories. That's what I feel. And
Hmm.
so where do you see this, the whole thing? In fact, it's somebody said that in Assam you have more PCOs, more news portals than PCOs, which that you had in the 90s. So everyone seems to be trying to tell their stories. So do you see this as a kind of a revolution, a silent revolution, making use of the digital space?
Yeah, yeah. See, all of us today, even though we are newspapers, we also have a website where people can access news, not just in the country, but from across the country. And as a newspaper with a website, we also get rejoinders, and we get articles from the UK, from the US, all over the world, where we have Meghalayans living, no? So they all keep abreast of what's happening in their home state through the internet. That is across the region. People who are outside the region are constantly looking up to see what's happening in Assam, what's happening in Meghalaya, in Tripura, in Nagaland. No, that's how they keep abreast of the news. So it's a great platform, the digital platform. I only wish that we had a more stable network, because the network is so unstable in the rural areas. In the urban areas, it's fairly good. But what we need now to report more on is what's happening in the rural areas. There's too huge a divide between the rural and the urban. Thankfully, social media is able to give us a lot of what's happening in the rural areas. People are sending, the other day, there is a highway that goes from Nongstoin to Garo Hills to Tura. That caved in. The middle of the road just fell apart like that. No, and very quickly that had come on social media before the news could get it. So I think social media is a great equalizer. Everyone has become a journalist today. The journalist is not any longer a very privileged.
Hmm.
It's nice in a way, and it will square up things, because now the rest of India knows enough about the Northeast. We don't have to be regurgitating on this issue. And as
Hmm.
you said, can tell our own stories, and we are telling them, and people are reading up. People are There are so many people who are so interested to know. So look at yourself and myself and all of us who have a lot of Facebook friends from the rest of India. They learn many things from what we write.
Mhm. Yeah. There's a comment from Sheila Lindo. Yes, Pat, such an interaction is much needed with the reporters, if any, there are in Dima Hasao district. No daredevils to report on facts in this
report
region, in this
facts in this
district,
district.
in this district, yeah. So, yeah, I think we need to do a lot
So
with,
I would ask
yeah.
Sheila, because I know Sheila runs a school, so I think it's very important at the school level to sensitize young people on journalism, on the art of communication. We hardly talk about journalism in school, no? I've never heard anyone talk about journalism during my school days. It's an unheard of thing. So now I think we need to introduce 2 or 3 chapters on not just journalism, but on the art of communication, on communication skills, which are so important, and to encourage young people to take up journalism. Now we have so many of our young women journalists, for instance, like Brinda. I saw Brinda watching. She's in Bangalore. Many of them are panning out. They're going out. But we don't have too many rural reporters, too many women rural reporters, which is sad indeed.
And in fact, I was just thinking about the media schools. We have so many media schools in the region, not just the region, even all over India. And in fact, all the universities in the Northeast have a media department, and there are so many private media schools. So you also interact with media students. So how do you see it panning out? I always felt that they follow a curriculum that is designed and tailored in Delhi. Somebody sitting in Delhi designs a curriculum, and uh, a student studying journalism in Mizoram, say Aizawl, or someone in Itanagar in Arunachal Pradesh, and we expect that person to study that same uniform curricula. And I feel that media is diverse. Media is diverse in the country. The country is diverse. So so is its media. So do you think our curricula needs to be tailored to meet the local needs of the region, and especially when you can't expect a student studying media in Aizawl in Mizoram University to go and work in Mumbai. Why can't he or she stay back and do something in his own place? So what do you think needs to be revamped in this whole media curriculum and media schools?
See, when we speak about students learning media in Mizoram, because now IIMC has set up shop there also, and a lot of young graduates will come out from that, or a lot of young diploma holders will come out of IIMC Aizawl. Now, the thing is, will all of them be, many of them will want to, many of them will want to go out, to what's happening? Yeah.
Yeah, some problem with your network.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
carry on.
So,
Carry on.
so what I'm saying is, of course, we have to tailor the needs of the journalism curriculum to understand the local first, then the regional, then the national, then the global. It should be that way. We should be, you know, experimenting with everything. Uh, See, the problem with some of the states is that journalism hasn't developed beyond a point. If you look at Mizoram, I don't see anything on the web. I don't see any newspaper from Mizoram on any internet site. Uh, Manipur very well developed. Tripura also, when it comes to the tribal areas. news about the tribal areas is always so, given short shrift. And the tribals themselves have not been able to create news in Tripura, although they have so many misgivings. Then uh, in Meghalaya, we have a lot of journalism schools. We have degrees in journalism, but the opportunities are limited in the state. There's a limit to how many people can be absorbed. So ultimately, they'll have to go out. Uh, but my hope and prayer is that the best stay back and give their best to their respective states.
Mhm. Also see a lot of literature emerging from the region now. A lot of people are writing books, and
Mhm.
now we see different kind of books being written, both fiction and so this emergence of writers from the region, and from almost every state in the region, people are started writing and being published by good publishers, um,
Yes.
well-known global publishers. So how do you
Yeah.
see this? And a lot of women are also writing. So do you think,
Hmm.
how do you see this development?
I think it's very exciting for me to see women writers coming up. I love Mitra Phukan's books, those short stories especially. They're so, so close to our hearts, because it's almost like we experience those stories in our daily lives. Then we have quite a few writers now coming up, even from Meghalaya. Then of women writers. You have writers who write in Assamese, but whose works are, I think that's marvelous. And the other states, though, too many writers. I don't know if you've met too many writers from Tripura. I haven't met any. Some
Mhm.
states just don't seem to be writing. Don't seem to have women writing, or women coming to the fore even to write articles. Uh,
Mm.
I know that Mizoram has quite a few writers, Mona Zote being one of those leading ones. Then
Mhm.
Nagaland, you have a plethora of them, very strong writers like Mona Lisa, like
Mm.
and all. It's, it's, and then the writing has such a huge range. It's very, very
Mm.
interesting, somebody from the outside, because they will only understand the region when they read these books. For instance,
Mm.
Easterine Iralu, very enriching to read her works.
Mm.
So uh, I think the rest of the world should be exploring the Northeast. The Northeast has
Mhm.
explored the world from a long time. Now
Yeah.
everything has to come full circle.
Mhm. Okay. And are you planning something new? I mean, our audience, your first book is out, and
Meaning,
I
yeah,
something
I
to
want to
your.
write. I'd like to write a storybook now. You know, I'd like to write short stories, and
Mm.
then put in all the thoughts and the anxieties and the frustrations and everything as well. The exhilaration in that book, so that it becomes a very, very good mix of the good, the bad, and the ugly, and
Mhm.
hoping that that will carry across a message. Sometimes when you write a book that's political, I think maybe it's too harsh. So
Mhm.
maybe it's better to put it in a story form. That, I mean, I'm
Mhm.
just writing, not too sure
Mhm.
how to go about it.
Mhm. And you also spoke about children being initiated into journalism and at the school level. How about what about children's literature? How do you think can we nurture children's literature, and why is it important? And do we have a rich, you know, I don't think I don't know about Meghalaya, but yeah, in Assam it's slowly developing. But I don't think we have that rich literature for children and that reading culture. You know, how
Mhm.
interesting are our libraries? Do we go to our libraries often? Are they interesting places? Are they exciting places? Or are they very drab places? So how do you think can we, you know, change things and yeah, especially children's literature?
You know, we have a state library here in Shillong, which is
Mm,
so kind of not well replenished with the latest books, and it looks like a very morose kind of place, you know, unlike
mm.
what libraries are in the West and in the
Yes.
rest of India, maybe. We need to make libraries a little more friendly. And I'm happy to
Mm,
see young people who have started libraries in mobile libraries and who started putting up libraries even in villages. I've heard of this and
mm,
I was planning to donate some books to them. But when
mm,
we come to children's literature, there's so
mm,
little of that, Teresa, especially in our language, in Khasi. There's very little
mm,
children's literature. I think it's very, very important now for people who can write to write in Khasi, to write good stories, because see, most of our stories are legends and myths, and they are quite kind of they are very tragic, you know, most of these stories.
mm.
I think
And
it's
scary
now
also.
important,
Mm,
yeah.
mm.
So it's important to write some light-hearted, hope-giving
Mm,
stories,
mm,
and to make them more kind of relatable to what's happening now. We don't need to be looking too far back all the time at all those
mm,
tragic stories and to build our lives around them. It's not a very nice thing, you know. So I
mm,
wish we have more of writers who will write children's literature, short ones
mm,
and nice ones, and something they can relate to, something they can, you know,
mm,
that bring them some joy at least. Yeah,
mhm.
life as
I
it is
remember.
very tough.
Uh-huh.
Mhm. Yeah,
I remember
please
there's
say.
this story called Teji Mola in Assam. You know, it's a folklore where this girl called Teji Mola, she's tortured by her stepmother, and how she, you know, breaks her hands and, you know, gradually. So it was like I was telling my daughter, you know, let me tell you the story of, you know, the legendary tale of Teji Mola. And after a while she started crying. So don't tell me this, this is so sad. Then I realized that,
Yeah.
you know, maybe I didn't react the same way, but my daughter said, no, 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 I don't want to listen to this, it is so sad, this is so scary.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
you know, and
yeah.
this
Many of our
again that it, yeah, it creates that,
yeah,
you know, reinforces the stereotypes about this bad
yeah,
stepmother.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah.
I don't know. So I think we need to think
We
afresh and
have we
think.
have a few we have a few stories of bad stepfathers. One of them
Okay.
is about a stepfather who killed a child and then fed the child's uh, body, you know, cut it into pieces, cooked it, and then fed it to the mother. And when the mother realized that her child had been killed and cooked and she had eaten the flesh, she went and naturally she jumped over a cliff. And so we have that waterfall now called No Kalikai. I think these
Okay.
stories are very, they're not, they're gross actually. I think we need to create more, you know, good light-hearted stories. I can
Mhm.
see Brian Walang is watching, so I
Mhm.
feel that people like him, who he is the principal of a school called Kiddies Corner, which is
Mhm.
a school that's very, very practical, you know, teaches children, they
Mhm.
they they're involved with, you know, they take part in singing choir competitions across uh, Asia, across the world. So it'll be very
Mhm.
nice if people like him actually come
Mhm.
forward and take this responsibility of telling some of
Mhm.
his teachers at least write a few stories, and then you can compile them. You know, it need not be written by one person. One
Mhm.
person can write two, three stories, and there are teachers in schools, and you know,
Yes.
you can have a story of maybe 1,000 words, yeah,
Mhm.
for little
Mhm.
children of class 1, class 2. So that's how we should begin. I think we should
Mhm.
promote this.
Mhm. So I think we had a very interesting discussion, and we already crossed 1 hour actually. So we are running out of time. And let me just read some comments. Yeah, Dimpi Mohanta says, "Hi, ma'am, Patricia and Teresa. So good to see two ladies I admire so much." Thank you, Dimpi. And yeah, so yeah, people are there are a lot of comments, but no questions.
Mhm, mhm,
But it was wonderful talking to you, Kongpat, and we're looking forward to your next book of short stories, as you said. So
mhm.
things which you can't write when in your newspaper, maybe you can
Yes.
create a legend and a fiction. And we just hope that we have more interesting and beautiful stories for children from the region, from different
Mhm.
communities, different
Different
in different
communities. Yeah,
dialects.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
we need more literature for children, which is missing. This is
Yes,
really
yes.
missing. Good books for children. Yeah.
Mhm.
So thank
That
you
is
so much,
how they
Kongpat.
will.
Yeah. Hmm.
No,
Yes.
that's the only way you can encourage them to read. Otherwise, what will they read? You know, they all the time they've been reading Jack and Jill went up the hill, and like some Naga person said once, you don't get water from up the hill.
Okay.
So, so yeah. On that note, thank you very much,
Hmm.
Teresa, for this wonderful
Thank you so
opportunity
much.
to.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I think there's one last comment. Pushpa Achanta said, is there journalist in Khasi? Is there journalism in Khasi? Yeah, of course there is
Yes, yes,
journalism in
yes, yes.
Khasi. Yes, yes. There are some very old newspapers. I think
We
I
have
remember doing a
several.
story. Yeah,
Yeah, there are
but
several Khasi newspapers, and all of them doing
right,
very well. Yeah.
very well. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so thank you so much, Kongpat. It was lovely talking to you, and hope we have more such conversations in future. Thank you so much, and thank
Yes.
you everyone for
Thank
watching.
you.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Good
Bye.
night. Bye.